Other examples here are the really common stuff that we see. Again, Wi-Fi, Exchange, email settings, calendar settings. All of that can be applied automatically, so that I don't have to go around to each user and help them set it up, or even worse, I don't have to publish all of that data out there where anyone can bring in their own device and start managing it. This provides me a really good, think of it kind of as the gatekeeper. If as a user, if I want to gain access to these IT resources, I know that the first step, I have to enroll my device, and then from there, I will get the appropriate access to my IT resources based on who I am as a user or where that device happens to be. So easy way there to do the initial configuration. The other part that I'm going to look at now is, again, iOS apps. Huge part of iOS management is how are we going to deploy iOS apps. And what we can do here is there's a couple of different options for how to get an app out in the hands of our users and deploy it. First off, let me make a quick distinction between what we're calling in-house apps and App Store apps. So anytime that you as an organization are going to develop an app that's going to be used only within your organization, it's not going to be sold on the iTunes Store, or not going to be a free app on the iTunes Store, and it is signed with your enterprise signing certificate, this is called an in-house app. And for anyone who's, if you're considering this, I think that we've found this is extremely beneficial. You can really get some great user productivity by looking at common tasks that you're trying to accomplish in your business, and how can we speed that up or make that more efficient using some in-house apps. A couple examples here, just really simple stuff, but time trackers, or sharing of charts and other financial data through in-house apps. Other things we've seen, any organization that has field staff that have to go out and visit customers, or go out and report on the status of some device or some equipment, it's really easy to set up. Instead of a checklist on a piece of paper that has to then be scanned or manually re-entered by hand, you can set this up with an app where you have, think of it as the digital checklist or the digital reference sheet that they can then use to do that work a lot more efficiently. So just a quick background there on the difference between in-house and App Store apps. But of course, we know that not all of us are iOS developers, myself included, and there are a tremendous number of really excellent apps available through the iTunes App Store. So that's going to be a big part of what we're deploying as well. So I'm just going to take that as an example and go out here and look for an app from the App Store. So I'll select App Store app, and I'm going to hit continue. And at this point, I can just simply search for the app that I want to add. I'll look for iWork. I know that I've got Pages, Keynote, and Numbers. So these are all available from Apple. Here I'm going to go in and add this. It's going to automatically pull in the relevant data. It'll grab the icon. And now what I have is a couple options here. I can make this one available in self-service, so that the user can go into that self-service tool directly from the iPad, download that, enter in their Apple ID, and then they'll actually get billed based on their Apple ID. So that's a way that if a user is going to be responsible for paying for that app themselves, really easy to do. I just make that available through self-service. Alternately, Apple has a way for businesses and schools to purchase app licenses in bulk. I think the minimum is 20 to no maximum really, and what they call the volume purchase program. So what I can do here is, if I want all of my employees to have access to Pages, I can go in, I can purchase 50 licenses from Apple. They'll give me a spreadsheet that includes redemption codes for all of those apps. Then here I can go in and upload that spreadsheet. And I've got a sample here. There we go. I'm going to upload that file. And now all those redemption codes, instead of just being stuck on a static piece of paper or in my spreadsheet, those are now available to be distributed out to my devices So what I've gained by doing this is I now have the option to either prompt the user to install or make it available in self-service. So I've kind of gained the option there of actually initiating the installation process because I'm now using the volume purchasing code, and the purchase phase of that transaction's already been taken care of. I've got a couple options here. I can deploy this as a managed app, which means that I have the option to remove it, and if I wanted to, I can prevent the backup of app data. So again, if this is something sensitive that you didn't want that backed up to a home computer, I have that option here as well. Then finally, the last step here, again, just as what we saw with the configuration profiles, I can go in, I can assign this to specific groups, departments, buildings, user groups, whatever makes sense. So if I have 50 of my codes, I'm going to go in and assign this to 50 devices, and then I will be ready to roll. So I will say all iPads. All right, and now that will, let's make sure I did this right, that will be available in self-service. Cool. So that's a quick view here of kind of how we can populate that app catalog and then make those apps available. Oh, it looks like I doubled up. So this is where you can add, any apps that you want to think of it as your recommended app list, or any apps that you want to purchase on behalf of your employees with the volume purchase program can be added through this tool. Now let me switch back, while we're on the subject of apps, let me switch back and kind of show you what that looks like from the end user experience. So there we go, I'm going to bring up my iPad as well. So now I've taken off my IT administrator hat and I've got back on my user's hat. So here's my iPad. Again, I've already enrolled this, and so you can see over here, there's my self-service web clip. I'll jump into self-service, and now I've got the option of all the apps that I've made available. So you can see some of these are free apps, some of these are paid apps. Next to Keynote, you can see that I've got the option to redeem. That means that I've done that with the volume purchasing program. But just for the example here, let me grab one of the apps that is free. Evernote, I like a lot. I use that one every day, so I'm going to install this. Now again, the user just gets prompted to install. Then they need to enter in their password. I'll hide this so I don't give away my password. All right, and that will install the app. So it's just that easy, from going from adding that app into the app catalog, the user can go and select it, they enter in their Apple ID, and now I've got Evernote. So good example there of kind of how we can make that process as easy as possible. Now after we've set up a number of devices and we've got a number of users using their iPads, iPhones, and they've started to add all these apps to them, we want to be able to keep track of that. So this is where we get back into the concept of inventory. So let me take a step back. I'm back into the web console now, so I'm back as an administrator, and I'm going to look for my 3rd generation iPad, and there we go. So I can see that this is the iPad that I've got. I'm going to actually look at all the details that we're gathering for that inventory. So basic device details here. I can see useful stuff to keep track of it: serial number, MAC address, the UDID. That helps me keep track of what's what. I can actually assign this device to a user. So I can go in here and say, this is Tad Johnson's, and there's my email address. Now one thing to note, had I, instead of using my shortcut MDM username when I initially enrolled, had I used my full Active Directory credentials, this would have automatically been filled out for me. So you can look at that as a nice way to kind of save some time and ensure that you always have accurate association between the device and the actual user who has that. Then I can see here, I can I can see that this device was purchased. If I wanted to, I could also look this up and pull in my warranty data. So then I know that this device, the warranty now expires in March of 2013. And when I look at my app data, I can see all the apps that are installed. Right now, I've only got one other than the ones that it comes with. I've got iBooks, I've got my 2 pending app installs. Now I see here, Evernote is queued for install. Now since I just installed that, I'm going to say, wait a second, what happened here? All I have to do to update that is I'm going to go back, request a new inventory update. That's going to submit a fresh inventory update from my device. And then if I search for this again, now I can see that I've got Evernote installed. So right there, we kind of saw the speed of going from a device back to your inventory, how quickly that happens. With security and kind of tracking the security management aspect, we can see that right now data protection is not enabled. I haven't set my password yet, so I can report on these fields. I can run a report, check for everyone who has not yet set their passwords, and either require that through that profile or contact them to make sure that they take care of that. And then a few more items here that I can track with network information, especially useful if you're tracking iPhones, profiles, and management history. So this is kind of a look at the different details that we can gather with our inventory records. I think that where this becomes really, taking static inventory data and turning that into actionable data is when we use that to either trigger alerts or trigger, follow-up tasks. So here's a great example. I'm looking for anyone who has actually let me update this to iOS 5. So they've got iOS 5 or above, and their data protection setting is not enabled. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting a threshold or a criteria based on my inventory data that I can look for any device that matches this criteria and then either send an email notification or I can simply use this for reporting. So I'm searching for that. Now I can view this membership and I see that I've got 2 iPads that currently meet that criteria. From there, I can send out an email or I can actually use this to then scope a configuration profile. So using inventory data to power decision-making, reporting, and alerting. Really useful stuff. And of course, as throughout the day, or as time moves forward, I should say, and as our users are adding new apps or using these iOS devices in different ways, every day they're going to submit a fresh inventory report. So we always have an accurate listing of what's out there, what apps are installed, and how the devices are being used. So we have good data that we can then use to help help us make decisions and help us understand what's out there in the iOS world. So let's see. The last couple pieces I want to cover here, and then I'm going to take a quick break for some questions, is two more items that I want to look at. The first one, and I think I'll jump into this one first, is ebook distribution. So just as like what we saw with distributing apps coming from the App Store, Apple's made a big push into the ebook world with their iBooks, iBooks Author, and their ebook bookstore. And so what I can do is I can use that same framework to distribute these books. Now, for an education market, this is a kind of a no-brainer. It makes it really easy to get access to books, to textbooks, or to other literature. In a business environment, don't think of this just as fiction books, but I could use this same framework to distribute PDF content. I could distribute reference books or reference materials, instruction manuals, new employee HR handbooks, any of that kind of content that you want to make available to your users on their devices, I can distribute through this same mechanism. So what I'm going to do here is first, let's look at how I can get a reference or how I can get a book from the bookstore. And now, of course, the Apple iBook store includes a number of useful reference manuals and things. But since I'm looking for a free book, I'm going to look for War and Peace. Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace. I'm going to add that. Very similar to what we saw with the app distribution. I'll go over here. I can add it to my device group. And now I'm ready to go. So just like that, I've got, I now can distribute an ebook from the bookstore. But as a more, I would say a more appropriate example for the enterprise world is distributing other content that we're keeping internally. So you can think of this as your internal library of books, reference materials, etc. So my example here, I've got my iOS management overview. It's a PDF that I've simply linked, from our website. I've uploaded an icon that associated with that PDF. And then again, I'm going to go in and assign this to specific device groups. Now with that, I'm going to save that. And let me go back one more time to my iPad, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right. So I'm on my iPad again. I'm going to go into self-service. It's going to load my self-service console. I'll go into eBooks. And now you can see I've got those two books, iOS Management Overview, War and Peace. For today, I want to look at iOS Management Overview. And now it first loads this in Safari, and then it can open it in either iBooks or any other apps that you prefer for reading PDF content. So now this is going to download that book to my iBook library. Now I've got it saved to my device. So I now have this for reference anytime I need it. So really, really easy way here to distribute content, make it easy on your users, and ensure that they're getting the most accurate content from you. The last piece now I'm going to show you is, and I like to keep this one last because this is that feature that I hope you never have to use it. I hope that this is the sort of thing that never even encounters your mind. But what I'm going to do here is look at remote commands, and specifically remote lock, remote wipe, and removing a passcode. So the first one I'm going to do here, I can actually let me show you both my screens at the same time. There we go. So what I'm going to do here is the remote lock command. I'm going to do this to lock a device. I'm going to look for iPad, and there we go. I'll send that remote command, and now within a matter of a few seconds, that device is going to be locked. There you have it, within half a second. The other example here, remote wipe. You can think of this as kind of the ultimate option for any time a device is lost or missing. So I think I'm going to hold off on this one because I don't want to. I want to keep this device usable for the rest of the demo here. But you can imagine same workflow we just saw, but instead of remotely locking the device, I can actually wipe that. It'll erase everything, all the content that's on the device, and return that to a factory state. So maybe as a more positive way of looking at it, not just when a device is lost or stolen, but I can also use this if I have a testing device, if I'm in my QA lab, or if I'm just going to internally distribute a device from one employee to another, kind of internal recycling of equipment. I can use that remote wipe to make sure that everything's gone before I give that to the new user. So that really is kind of the highlights here of what I wanted to show you with iOS management with the Casper suite. And now let me go back here to my slide deck, and let's just see if there are other questions that came in through the there we go. If there's other questions that came in through chat or through the Q&A log. So I see one question came in about, do I need a developer account with Apple to use the self-service app catalog? Absolutely not. This is something that's available. The self-service app catalog can simply advertise apps that are already in the App Store. So think of it just as your recommended list, your list of pointers. No additional developer accounts are required to use that. And in fact, you don't have to have a developer account to do any of the tasks that I showed you today. Then there's a question, can I push out app updates? So that was one part that, I guess one part I missed here when I was looking at this. When I'm in my self-service tool, any of the apps that I have installed will actually show up here in the app update. So I can actually go in here and install an app update the same way that I installed my initial app. This is again coming through iTunes. So you have a way for, basically your users can go into that same self-service tool and grab not only new apps, but also the updates to the existing ones. Now of course, if they prefer, I can also just go in and use the App Store to do those updates. But really, I have either way, I can ensure that my updates are ready to go. Ooh, even better question coming in over the line now. Can I push iOS updates? Great question. Today, that's not something that Apple offers through the mobile device management specification. So what I can see here, let me make this a little bigger. One of the ways that I was using my inventory data is, we all know that iOS 5.1.1 was recently released. So what I did here is I made a smart group that looked for all my devices to see if anyone did not yet have 5.1.1. And from there, I can see the total list of devices that meet that criteria. Now, I'm not able to push this iOS update, but I can use this list to then send out an email, send a notification, maybe send an SMS to an iPhone user, instructing them, how to go in and get that update. So, great question there. Let's see, I've got a couple more coming in. Can I assign multiple users to one iPad? For example, teachers that share an iPad in a classroom. The iPad is really a single user device, kind of the way that it's organized. So again, at this point, you can certainly share one iPad between different users, but there's no real concept of a user account on the iPad. So I think that the best way to do that is, when possible, a one-to-one iPad, one iPad to one person. But if you are doing a shared model, I think that's where what you can do is think of it more as a sync station, where you can go grab an iPad off the stack, use it for the day, for the hour, for the shift, whatever the case may be, and then when you return it, just sync that again to your syncing station. It'll get recharged and ready to go. So I guess that's a partial yes and a partial no for that question. But really, the iPad does not have the concept of a user account like we're used to on our desktop PCs. And here's a good one. If I disable something like YouTube, does the icon disappear, or is it just not usable? Great question there. So if I want to come in here, so you might have noticed when I was looking at mobile device configurations that I can actually go in here and set up restrictions. So I can restrict things like using the camera, using screen capture, YouTube, iTunes, Safari. I can set up all those restrictions. Then if I want to actually apply this one to my iPad, I'll save that. And what that looks like on the iPad is, now when this, nope, not quite yet. Once that gets applied to that device, then all those icons will actually disappear. So what did I do wrong here? So I guess the answer to your question, the icons will disappear. So I will no longer see an icon for YouTube, for example. But the app is still there. It's just not going to be usable. So that's kind of what that looks like. All right, a few more questions rolling in. Can we enroll multiple Exchange accounts on one iPad when enrolling? So during the enrollment, you're going to want to use one username and password to do the enrollment. But once it's done, you can certainly deploy any number of Exchange accounts onto that device through the configuration settings. And let's see if I got a couple more here. Here's a good question coming from Jim. I work for an IT service provider and service many different customers. Can I organize by manage devices by organization or customer, absolutely. You can set that up in your in the inventory records and then simply organize that depending on the customer record number or the customer name to keep track of those different ones. So great questions all. Again, really appreciate the time here that everyone is for joining in. A couple of final thoughts. We looked at the different iOS configuration options here: inventory, configuration, security management, distribution. For anyone that's using Macs, just keep in mind that the Casper Suite can also manage the full lifecycle of the Mac OS X environment, and then we integrate nicely with a lot of common Apple enterprise tools: Active Directory, Open Directory, GSX, Configurator, the iPhone configuration utility. So think of this tool. This is both, this is the deep and wide tool for managing the full Apple platform as deeply as possible. The last part I'll leave you with before we wrap things up here, as Lamar Burton used to say, don't take my word for it. Go read a book. But what we have is JAMF Nation, which you can find at jamfnation.com. And went away from me there. And this is where our users can share information, share tips, share advice, rant and rave about what's great and what's not great. I'd really encourage anyone who's interested in iOS management, go and just check out the discussions that are going on at JAMF Nation. I think that you'll find some really useful information, whether you're a customer of ours today or whether you're not. I think there's some great information there specific to IT managers that are managing Apple devices in an enterprise environment. So with that, again, let me say thank you. Since this is hosted by MacMall, I want to say thank you to Katie again. MacMall is an authorized reseller of the Casper Suite products. So if you're interested in what you saw today, and if you'd like to talk more about how we can get the Casper Suite into your environment and start solving your IT challenges with the Apple platform, please reach out to your sales representative from MacMall. They'll be working with myself and my team, and we can hopefully help you manage these devices safely and securely. So with that, I'm just at the top of the hour here. Again, thank you all so much. Hopefully you have a great rest of your week, and hopefully we can welcome some of you as customers soon. All right, thank you.
Ted.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone for joining us today. This session is now over.